put it on this computer. There we go. Okay. What's up, everybody? Out there in Raw Deal Land, we are back, and I've got actually a new guest. So we have Evan again from last time, and we've got Mike, who is another one of the playtesters. Difficult to coordinate this time, but luckily he had some situations come up where we could make this work. So how you doing, Mike?
Pretty good, pretty good.
That's good. And how you doing, Evan?
Wonderful.
Awesome. So we decided to do a little bit of a roundtable discussion. One, shamelessly plugging the new tournament that got posted up because I'm partially organizing it. And the other one was we just kind of wanted to do another one of these because it seemed like everybody kind of liked it the last time. So the tournament that I'm gonna shamelessly plug is the King of the Ring tournament that my buddy Pat and I had spent a couple of weeks talking about. We're like, we want to do another tournament, but we were kind of missing the old school feel of Raw Deal tournaments because like some of these Octagon tournaments where like the last one we played in was you could play a different deck every round. And it's the cool thing about Raw Deal, at least to me as a competitive game, was the diversity rule. It was always something very unique to the game, and it wasn't something that we could ever really do in that kind of environment. So we decided to go with a more traditional style Raw Deal tournament with Swiss, cutting to some number of top based on the number of participants we have, using the diversity rule. We are going to have a prize. I can't remember. We said it's going to be an undisclosed backstage signature that we are going to be providing, or we as the organizers will pay for you to get your deck made as real cards, not real like comic images cards. We will get them made real fake cards to kind of immortalize the deck that you won. What was that, Mike?
Everybody turns up as the Rock to get a food stamp.
No thanks. But it was to immortalize the deck that you got to win with, which we thought was kind of a cool idea. We're gonna have 1 week in between rounds. That should give everybody enough time with all of the time zone differences. And yeah, so that was how we decided to go about it. We are going to be doing deck lists. Dilbert has been gracious enough to take on housing the deck lists, checking them before the tournament starts so that we can make sure that your deck is legal. And then there may be random deck checks as we go. It is an online tournament. We hope that everybody is going to be fair and not try to cheat, but we do want to make sure that since we are giving away prizing, we want to make sure that it's kept up to the standards that we could do in an in-person event. Make sure nobody's changing their lists between rounds and whatnot. So on that note, what do you guys feel about that? Because you guys have participated in more of these online tournaments than I have, and kind of the differences between them as opposed to some of the more traditional Raw Deal tournaments of the past.
Well, I've been in all of them so far. The first one was kind of the closest to this proposed tournament than the other ones have been. It was choose one deck and use that deck for every round. And that's the tournament that I won.
Nice.
With Pete Dunne, because Pete Dunne is awesome.
Keep looking at him. I just never sit down to actually.
Broken.
And that was when he only
didn't have support.
He only had 3 cards at that time, and I was like, I'm gonna see, if he can win. He could. That was the famous 3.5 hour long game against Mighty BP and his Psycho Sid.
Oh wow.
Oh, that was a long game. Anyway, but the other tournaments have been kind of more gimmicky. It was either choose a different deck every round, or it was Frankenstein, which is a totally unique format.
I never understood that format. How does that format work?
It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Frankenstein is basically on Octagon, you get everyone into the same game. Someone will load up a arsenal of just superstar cards. So all 300 and whatever superstar cards. And then it's like, all right, Mike, you're up first. So then we reveal the top 2 superstar cards, and it's, Christie or Big Freaking Machine. and Mike can say, all right, I want to be either Christie or Big Freaking Machine as my superstar and backstage. Or if he doesn't want either of them, he can choose door number 3, which is whoever the top card is who you get.
Okay.
So if he says, all right, I don't want any of them, and then he overturns Big E, then he's Big E, superstar, and backstage.
Okay.
And then we say, all right. So then we shuffle the 2 not chosen into the arsenal, and then we reveal 2 more. And whoever he picks, he gets their backlash specifics.
So you do it 3 times. Once for your actual superstar backstage, backlash, and then Arsenal.
Yep.
Oh wow. That's interesting.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. It can also be frustrating.
That can also be some really degenerate combos.
Yeah.
I got a bummer for the Arsenal.
Oh.
I had the option between Bobby Lashley and somebody, and I opted for door number 3 and landed up with the Hurricanes.
Yeah.
Hurricane and Stacey, right. You only get never forgive, never forget.
So one of the there's no official rules for Frankenstein,
sure.
but the rule that we did was if your superstar doesn't have any Arsenal cards, then you get a free redraw unless it's door number 3.
Okay. Are there many superstars that don't have Arsenal cards?
There's a couple.
Okay.
I think Moolah.
I think it was like 1 to 2. If they've got 1 to 2 Arsenal cards, you could.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I got my superstar was Big E, and backstage. My backlash was Dean Malenko, which was pretty good. And my Arsenal was Johnny Nitro, I think, which was like 2 cards.
But I mean, Big E is a good starting point.
Yeah, and I could play cards from ringside because I was part Dean Malenko. It was okay. It was only an cool. Okay deck. It was fine.
I ended up with Molly Holly for backstage and Maurice for the backlash. It was fun, but I sucked.
I think Scotty won that because he got Boogeyman as his superstar, which that's enough to be annoying.
Yeah.
I don't remember who else he had, but it was a good draw. And Keith. One more thing about the Frankenstein
tournament.
Was
ridiculous. That was ridiculous.
Keith couldn't make the actual draw, so he said, "Just give me the top 3," and it was Edge, Randy Orton, and someone else ridiculous.
Best wrestler in the world was backstage.
Right.
God, those 3 are all really good.
His superstar was best wrestler in the world. His backlash was Edge, and his Arsenal was Randy Orton.
That's like the perfect combo. Like Edge has the best backlash out of those 3. Yeah, wow, that's really good.
It was insane.
Yeah. Well, that sounds like a really cool format.
But yeah, Frankenstein's fun. It'd be fun to do another one. But the other tournaments have just been kind of, we did one tournament where I was like, I'm only going to use people who have won King of the Ring in real life.
Okay.
So like first round I was Bret Hart, and then I was Owen Hart, and then I was Brock Lesnar. I lost in the finals of that one, but we don't.
Lost in the opening round.
So yeah, they've all been kind of mixed, I guess.
So do you feel that
up until this most recent tournament, they've all been with the exception of the Frankenstein tournament, which was basically you got put in like pods of 3 or 4, I can't remember, and then it went on to like kind of knockout King of the Ring style tournament. They've all been knockout King of the Ring style tournament up until this latest Swissy.
Okay.
And I find that I do not fare well in knockout style tournaments.
I always prefer Swiss personally if I'm gonna devote myself to a tournament, because like single elimination, like you just feel bad. Like even if you lose all of your games, at least you got to play.
Exactly.
In a Swiss tournament. I'm right there with you.
I get the knockout tournaments are fine. Like if if any tournament pops up, I'm going to take part in it.
Sure.
Knockout tournaments are fine, but it's like if you get put out first round, you're waiting a couple of months before the next tournament comes up.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
At least on Swiss, you've gotten, can you get to play through 5 rounds in the last one, and then you had to wait 2-3 weeks until the next tournament got announced.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So you guys having kind of, like I said, the more experience, are you excited for this upcoming tournament with the knowledge that, one, the diversity rule is back? I think the diversity rule is going to be less hampering to the game, because I know a lot of people, like, there are the situations that come up as like 4 people played the best deck, all went undefeated. One of them gets to advance. That sucks. That's a crappy situation. But I think with the amount of playable superstars in Virtual Classic now, I think that the diversity rule is going to be more just for nostalgia than it'll be impactful. Than it was in the past. Because, like, when Andre and Pipe were running around, it's like, okay, do I play the best deck and hope I go undefeated, and then hope my schedule's the best?
Well, it's funny, really. Like, well, our play group up here, for years, we had rosters. So you would pick 4 guys every 6 months, and through that time, you could get 1 swap, but you couldn't have anyone that was on anybody else's roster. So if you had the Rock, somebody else couldn't pick People's Champ.
Okay.
And then we eventually just decided to get rid of rosters. Anybody could turn up as anybody. And this was after we brought in virtual that we got rid of the rosters. So you would think bigger pool of superstars, so there's less chance that you're going to turn up the same superstar as somebody else. Since we did that, it's happened to me twice. And I came up and top both times.
Wow. All right. That's funny.
Yeah.
Double J and Becky Lynch.
Oh, that's weird. That's weird. It's kind of, there's the most superstars in the game are there. Everyone is capable of winning any given game.
Mm-hmm.
Some people are more capable.
Really?
Some people are more consistent.
Yeah, and some people are less capable, like AJ Lee, who might be my pick for. I don't want to say the worst, but
I do.
The least good, in my opinion.
That's a shame.
And Mike's.
Too. She had such a great character on screen.
She's down in the Sable tier of superstars.
Sable's so much better.
Sable can win. I made a point to try to make the best Sable deck ever relatively recently, and I won a game with it.
I feel like Sable comes out over AJ Lee just because Sable gets good arsenal cards from her enforcers.
Right, that's the thing. Sable needs other people's cards to make her playable. Which is fine, But the diversity rule is, a lot of those top tier guys, the Game, Brock Lesnar, Yokozuna, like those guys, the first tournament after V11 came out, there was like 3 Yokozunas, and that was the tournament where you could play a different guy every round.
Yeah.
So like if 3 people show up with Yokozuna, 2 of them aren't going to make it.
Yep.
There's a couple of Amber Moons as well, wasn't there?
Yeah, there was at least 2.
I played at least 2 Shayna Baszlers. Yeah, Mike was one of them. Thought I was going to lose that game so bad. As soon as you hit the step stage, I'm like, I lose.
You never say never in Raw Deal.
Yeah. But yeah, so I'm sorry, I kind of cut you off there.
No, I mean, that was kind of it. It's just, there's people who in a tournament, they insist on playing the top of the top tier guys. And that's kind of where diversity is better, is because it kind of encourages people to play one of the, lesser played superstars, perhaps.
And as a player who generally likes to play the rogue deck, like the fringe rogue deck myself in most competitive games that I played in, that's probably why I always was drawn to the diversity rule, because it incentivizes you to play something off the wall. Because if you as a player can pilot it well enough to go in a 5-round Swiss X2, you've got a shot.
Yeah.
You've got a better shot than other X2s that are playing the more represented decks. I've even heard of people going X3 and making it in because of all of the diversity rules.
Yeah.
So I've always been a fan of it personally.
Like, see, the diversity rule is somewhat new to me because we only just brought it in recently in our play group, and also if Classic was the thing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm too young to be in the competitive scene and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
So I had no idea about any of this stuff, but I have played in some tournaments for Yu-Gi-Oh! And that is something that it could be very, like, I could very well be implemented into other card games as well, because when I was last playing Yu-Gi-Oh! A few years ago,
Every game's a mirror match after a certain point.
Or was a deck I was using that had just recently been hit by the ban list, and I was like, okay, I can still make this work, so I'm just going to keep using this deck. But at the time, it was you play either Dragon Rulers or Mermails, or you lose, or you're naked top, and then like the top 16 or the top 8, whatever it was in that tournament, it was all Mermails and Dragon Rulers.
Yeah.
And
it creates a very stale game state. And
it pushes cards, pushes the prices of cards up, and it makes it, as you said, stale.
Yeah.
Makes it too narrow.
When we were talking about the diversity rule, Pat was telling me a funny story. It was long after I'd gotten out of the game, and it was the time of Andre, and Andre being a top superstar in Classic, and our buddy Dom went X1. He went 4-1 with Andre, and lost out in Top Cut to a 5-0 Andre that went to the diversity rule, and he openly said, "I lost the game with the broken version of the broken deck. I didn't deserve to be there." And that just made me laugh. I was like, so there were people that got screwed out of it that had that mindset of, I didn't deserve to be there if I lost with the best deck. Yeah, just like I said, the mirror matches, when you have a format that doesn't have that diversity rule, it creates a very stale game state. Dragon Ball Z had a very similar problem when I was playing. You had the best personalities, you had the best fighters that consistently made the top cut, and you could see there was one tournament where 7 of the top 8 decks were all the same deck. And I'm like, that's absurd. As somebody that doesn't like that kind of environment, that's absurd.
Well, it was also diversity was important, especially in Classic, because net decking was such a pandemic back then. It was like someone won a tournament with this deck. So now at your local tournament, 3 people are going to show up with, Fortitude Plunge Ric Flair, or,
Right,
Up and Adam Devon was popular for a minute. Tables, Trish Stratus. You're going to get these kind of deck of the months.
Yeah.
Whereas if you show up with Bubba Ray Dudley, it's like, all right, you have at least a little bit of an advantage.
Yep.
See, that's another thing that's quite foreign to me as well, Ken. As I said before, I'm too young to be doing the competitive thing at the time, and then it wasn't until a year ago that I actually started regularly going on to TCO.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Ken, even net decking to an extent before was like, that's just something that would even compute.
Yeah.
And I've had conversations.
Why would you look for somebody else's ideas? I mean, I don't have a problem if you look at a deck and take inspiration and ideas from it. If you copy a deck card for card, that's where I see a problem. So
I know you and I have had a conversation about this, and me and I want to say House on the Discord had to talk about this. Like, we had a long dialogue about net decking. I've never really had a problem with it. The problem where I draw the line of net decking is when you net deck a deck and succeed with it and take credit for it.
Yeah.
You can take credit for piloting it, but don't take credit for building it. Because I personally and wholeheartedly agree, as somebody who is one of those types of players, there are players that are better pilots than there are builders, and there are better builders than there are pilots. So the pilots who generally just can't sit down with cards and look at them and see them the way a builder does, can take a deck that somebody else built and just play it very well. I consider myself one of those players. I'm getting better at being a builder now that I've come back to Radio and like really dove headfirst into building and making content for it. So I've never really had a problem with net decking. It's the problem that when people take credit for it. I mean, I've had Evan send me lists. I've made them card for card, played them, and then after I play them, I'm like, okay, here's where I would change things. As the player mind, that's where I would change things of what fits my play style.
Yeah.
So playing a deck card for card isn't a problem. It's when it becomes kind of a toxic part of it, of the personality of it than the actual action of it.
And luckily there's like, 350 superstars in Raw Deal. So hopefully there's not much needed in terms of diversity.
Right. So that'll lead us into our kind of branching off from the tournament aspect and talking about the diversity rule to with the tournaments that we've seen, with all of the online play that goes on, because there's a fair amount of online play going on basically every night, which is really cool.
Throughout the day, like you can just look at your phone and there's a few messages, LFG.
Yeah, I'm like, man, I'm at work. I would love to play these.
Exactly.
And then there's also like the Chile contingent of Raw Deal, which they have they're in their own world.
Mm-hmm.
And they always have like any given day, there's like 3 games going on.
Yeah. So if we were able to if this pandemic never happened and we were able to do in-person events, much like the events that got recorded on Eric's YouTube, that was what brought me back into Raw Deal. Where would you see, as of V11, where would you see a meta defined right now? Who would you say are your top, if you had to pick a top 8 with a diversity rule, who would you see them as?
Superstars?
Superstars. Or superstars or generic archetypes.
Drawing a blank.
What'd you say?
I said drawing a blank is in there.
Drawing a blank is.
Having played it for the
It's-
first time this
it's
past
okay.
weekend with Shayna Baszler, will agree.
Yeah, Shayna. Well, the thing with drawing a blank is as good as the
The
superstar
superstar around it.
Shayna
Does
gets
it absurdly
around.
well.
She gets around the fortitude requirement, and as long as she has a choke in her ringside,
Mhm.
she's good. I have Great Khali built, and he has a blank ability, so he
Yep.
gets the entire text of drawing a blank. And I use I know who pays my salary to give myself lower fortitude.
Mhm.
And he just smashes. He's really good. And all
And
of his moves,
he gets the blank ability version of drawing a blank too.
and all of his moves are like +3 damage and +1 stun value or something like that. He's really good. But then there's guys like, the people who, if their superstar isn't like obviously
that
a
way.
drawing a blank build, they're usually just okay drawing a blank. It all depends. Like Big E makes a good drawing a blank deck.
I know we talked about that when I was building mine.
Yeah. He's not the best of them, but he's a good one. Arn Anderson is really good with drawing a blank.
Alexa Bliss.
Alexa Bliss, yeah. Jinder Mahal gets heat moves as
And Phil Nelson slams.
yeah, he doesn't have to play the move from hand, which is helpful.
And we were talking about on our last cast, Evan, like Ember Moon. Ember Moon's good drawing a blank because she already doesn't want to have printed reverse restrictions on them.
Yeah, the more restrictions she can put on a deck, the better she is.
Yeah.
I built Lay Cool with drawing a blank no escape. And it's not the choice, but it's good.
No Escape's probably an archetype I would put in the top 8.
I've seen No Escape was a big problem. Not problem, but it was a big meta choice. And then I've actually seen a little bit less of it since V11 came out, but I don't know. We didn't really do anything to make No Escape.
I was like,
worse.
V11 didn't really make No Escape worse. Are people just packing more making your escape?
Maybe.
Like, does that become like the meta shift right there?
Well, I think after V11 or after any set comes out, people want to use what's in
The
that
new
set.
stuff.
because it's new. And other than, Yokozuna, no one else was really geared towards a no escape build. Yokozuna, on the other hand, it might as well be a specific for him because he's kind of built around unique maneuvers or classic maneuvers.
He's like Sting.
So yeah, going back to your question about like superstars and meta choices, Yokozuna, we saw a lot of him early. I've seen less of him recently, but he was the
Let's see them
first.
at all.
He was the first. Like everyone was like, "Oh my God, Yokozuna is so good now."
He
Which,
got 8 more cards.
yeah, and 15 more Arsenal cards that he can pack. I think the number one meta changing card from V11 is Puncher's Chance,
Agreed.
which I know Mike is a big fan of because
Yeah, God.
Mike and I play a lot, and I use Puncher's Chance a lot.
I think I went from 0 Puncher's Chance decks to 3 in the span of a week.
I think I have one.
My Big E is a Puncher's Chance deck. My Kane
So
is
is
a
mine.
Puncher's Chance deck, and the Oscar deck that I'm working on is a Puncher's Chance deck.
I don't have time to go through everyone I have.
No.
I think Dean Malenko, just talking as a superstar, like with the updates that he got in V11, I think he's a viable contender.
But he's a good example of build and pilot, because I've seen a couple Dean Malenkos just spectating where it doesn't really have like a theme to it or anything like that. It's just
Put
here's a
generic
bunch
good
of
stuff in.
Yeah, here's just random cards that I can play from ringside. So Dean is up there in the upper tier of superstars.
Yeah.
But if you're not the right builder or you're not the right pilot, it's not automatic.
That's kind of how I feel about Undisputed Era too. I think they're a top tier superstar that really requires I think they require like Dean, the 50-50 build pilot mindset of your build has to be good enough, but you have to know what to do with it.
Absolutely.
Same with a guy like Tommaso Ciampa.
Yeah. Oh boy, I played against him
it-
for the first time again in a while and forgot how good that deck
It's
was.
so easy.
Forgot how good that deck was. Yeah.
It's so easy to fuck it up.
It really is. And I think that's really interesting about Raw Deal is Raw Deal has your top superstars like are generally fairly like, at least they used to be, they were like fairly easy to pilot. Now it's like decks are a lot less forgiving. Like if you make the mistake, like it can just lose you the game, and you can lose in the pre-match. Like you can make a mistake in the pre-match and lose.
Yeah.
Because of it, which is interesting.
So being on the design team, I always like to have, we every superstar we make, they're going to be playable. We don't try to make unplayable superstars other than the revival.
Because then nobody is going to play them.
When the revival came out, they were just a mess, but their V11 support fixed them, and now they're really good. But when we make superstars, I like to make kind of easier to pilot superstars and then more complex more complex to pilot superstars. Like V11 had, Shayna Baszler, which, is pretty simple. Throw chokes in your ringside and they're difficult to reverse, and this reverse everything your opponent does.
Yep.
We also had Aleister Black, who's like requires like 200 IQ.
It requires 3 degrees and 3 different studies.
I still have to do all his stuff.
and they're both really good. Shayna versus Aleister Black would be a good game. It's just one requires, PhD level 420, 69 IQ, and the other requires I need chokes in my ringside.
Which then that brings another like interesting competitive mindset. And this is the stuff that I think about also from my play HeroClix standpoint, competitively. Can you play like Aleister Black can be a top tier superstar, can win you a tournament. Can you play that style of deck for 8 rounds and play it well? Now it's different because we're doing it one game a week. If you had to play in person in one day, can you play a deck like that for 8 rounds and play it well? It's interesting. So that kind of leads people to other decks as well.
You might run into the time limit if you bring Aleister Black to a
Fair.
in person. I mean, it depends on your Aleister Black deck, but
Absolutely.
he can live for quite a long time.
Yeah,
I,
no time limit on these tournaments is also really blowing me for a loop.
I will another meta in the opposite direction. I've seen a lot less chain.
Yeah. And
Because
ever
people have
since-
got a false thing in their heads that chain is dead.
Yeah, no,
It's
it's
dead.
still good.
yeah. I
Evan,
mean,
your British Bulldog deck.
right. I have a British Bulldog built chain. So British Bulldog, all of his first 2 non-unique grapples each turn are multi. And then
Chain multis are good.
yeah. So I use Calgary
Yep.
and he has his own
Does he get Heart
backstage card.
Family?
He does, but I have him. He also gets the cornet stuff, so I use
Okay, so you have
that.
him with the cornet stuff.
But I use Calgary anyway,
Yeah.
plus his own backstage. So it's like, if you reverse my grapple from hand, not only is it multi and chain, so you probably lost 4 cards in your hand, but I get to shuffle 2 from Calgary, and then I get to shuffle 2 maneuvers with his own backstage card.
Yeah.
So you lost 3 or 4 hand cards, and I just shuffled back 4 cards from my ringside, including, eye rake, back rake, or
Yep.
whatever, but yeah, chain is still, it's not
not
oppressive.
Exactly.
It's more balanced now,
And
when
you can
we-
take chain in a different direction of even using it as an engine. Like I built a Chris Jericho deck that's a hand destruction deck and trying to mill you with like no way out. I use chain as a mill mechanic.
Yeah.
Yep. Another thing I would just to go back to the no escape thing, it became like an hour meta between our, I suppose it was 12 players at the time. No escape was so prevalent in our meta that it just came down to you just stopped packing so many hybrid reversals, and it was just as simple. And I think that's a big factor in why you don't see as much no escape now, because it's not only just happened in our play group, it's happened in a lot of play groups, and people have just kind of got into it.
Yeah.
Subconsciously thinking, without really thinking about it, I'm going to run no escape, so I'm not going to run too many hybrid reversals. Like in my Shayna Baszler deck, I've got 2 Spine Busters, 2 Power Slams. That's it.
Mm-hmm. And that's that becomes an interesting dynamic of the local meta, like the more regional meta, to these kind of tournaments where you get to play online against everybody in the world. You see a lot of different styles come from the different regions. So like Mike, in your region, like if no escape is prevalent where you're playing, so you start cutting down on the hybrid reversals, you go into one of these tournaments where you're playing somebody from, the US, like me or Evan, and we're not playing no escape as often. Now is your deck just slightly worse because you have been playing so much for that specific restriction that now you don't have those tools accessible to you. But should you come up against the no escape deck, you are much better prepared than somebody else who isn't prepared for it.
Yes.
But regional metas are always fascinating to look at and see how they change from the different areas.
Oh, agreed. Our meta, volley has never been a player in our meta. Never.
That's surprising because volley's really good.
Yeah.
It's very straightforward, but it's good.
And then Mike started to play me when I was going.
And then I realized the reason why volley has never been so strong in our meta is because I always forget to either grab a maneuver or tell my opponent I can't play that action.
Turns out volley's not good when you forget about the volley chain.
I would just be like, oh, I've got the Bookerman Superstar card, I'm going to be fine.
I mean,
he's a good volley deck.
Yes.
Okay, so we've got chain kind of falling out. So drawing a blank definitely up there. All right.
I think I've I hardly see any bash decks anymore.
I've tried.
I used to be big into Bash. I used to be so big into Bash.
I have a couple. And I think the counter reversals are pretty good for a bash deck.
Yeah, agreed. Well,
So,
especially if they get no sell.
was that?
Especially if they get no sell as well.
Yeah, like I have Nia Jax bash, which I played against
Yep.
you in the last tournament. And I feel like whenever I'm like spectating on a game, it's never bash. And I feel like bash is still good. But the problem with bash and virtual is bash has a hard time dealing with unique maneuvers.
Yep.
And
Yep.
when more than half of the game now is unique because of virtual,
Yep.
it makes it a little more difficult.
That's the same reason I got into a discussion with somebody and my play group have discussed. Legendary defense is just better than Jimmy in every legend deck. There's no reason to pack Jimmy over legendary defense.
Yeah.
Because Jimmy doesn't hit unique maneuvers, and unique virtual became. Now, I've only been playing since V10, but I can see the progression as I look at the cards throughout the sets. Virtual became very unique heavy.
Yeah.
That's why JBL needed an errata.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's definitely when your archetype has a weakness to what the game has really shifted to as far as the type of maneuvers, comboed with a lot of bash decks are just very straightforward. They're very straightforward throw maneuver decks. And unfortunately, with those style of decks, when they're met with the resistance, they start to fall apart.
Right. That's what happened with my Nia Jax. Again, your Tajiri is built to reverse
Yep.
everything.
Yep.
And I just once you hit 5 fortitude, I knew I wasn't going to be playing strikes anymore. So I had to rely on like bash suplex or bash headlock.
Yep.
And
but it's hard to discount starting with 3 fortitude.
right.
It's really hard to discount that. It's
Or
one of the
4 in
reasons,
some cases.
or 4, and I was just about to talk about the Phenom, who gets to get 4 of those cards.
Well, and then you've got other people like the MMA specialists to get the extra one, and then you've got overrated superstar. You could start with 5 sometimes as well.
Yep. Road
And,
Warriors who get -4 to theirs.
We just spoiled the Hurt Business faction.
Yep.
Which gives you 1 fortitude.
It took me 4 times looking at that card to realize it gave you 1 fortitude.
I didn't realize it first.
It's gotta hurt. It's gotta hurt.
It does everything. Oh, it gets fortitude too.
It hurts. I think one meta that I've really been using a lot of is blindside.
Yeah.
With the virtual 11 blindside support, especially cheater blindside.
Blindside aggression is really good.
Yeah, blindside aggression has really, really made cheater blindside valid. Where, before there was no reason to run cheater blindside.
Because blindside hook was just your go-to starter.
Well, not only that, but you have the drop toe hold and the sleeper, which are all fan favorite. And now, who needs those cards when I'm throwing, a protected blindside tornado strike every turn or blindside slam? And some superstars work better with it than others, but you can throw blindside into pretty much any deck.
Yeah.
Just as like a backup plan, even.
That's what when Evan and I were talking about. I was finally sitting down with my Samoa Joe deck after he got changed, and I'm like, I've made all of this room for the cards that I wanted to cut. I don't know what to do. He's like, try blindside. And I'm like, I'm already cheater, so I might as well like throw the blindside aggression, blindside, brutal blindside beating, Beal tosses, and those. And it's like, oh, and they get chained because they're from my ringside.
Yep.
Which I thought was really neat. I can definitely agree with like blindside's definitely V11 brought to light a lot of really good archetypes that didn't see a lot of play. And it also like for a long time, like when I was looking at it, like just I say for a long time, when I started playing in V11, a lot of the allegiances really didn't interest me. Like The only one that I ever really played was the NWO Allegiance or Winning Side, My Side. V11 really made the SmackDown and the Raw Allegiance. I've built so many Raw Allegiance decks recently because I want to play Beat You Raw Throwback. Because Beat You Raw Throwback is such a good card. That I really love the direction that went of bringing in some of these underused cards from the previous sets. And I think Raw Allegiance and are you ready for a good time? Like that makes the SmackDown Allegiance just better. And there's 2 different ways to build SmackDown Allegiance. You could play Good Time
It's
or
actually it's actually made the SmackDown multi high risks playable as well.
Yeah, 100%.
And it's a reason to play SmackDown that's not Vicky.
Exactly. That's why there were 2 different ways to play now the SmackDown Allegiances. Vicky
So you messaged me yesterday or maybe the day before, and you were like, I don't know if I should make this deck Raw or SmackDown. And I was like,
Yeah.
well, when in doubt, Raw.
Yeah.
Like it's not even close. Like when in doubt, you go with King Interferes and Unscrupulous.
Yep.
Like what's there's not a ton of reason to go
To play SmackDown.
non-Vicky, non-Good Time SmackDown.
Yeah. Generic SmackDown doesn't really exist.
Yeah.
Unless you're just playing, if you get some kind of perk for ban for ringside or.
That's what, like my KO is a generic SmackDown, but
Yeah,
I wanted it for
Mhm.
Perfectly Executed Tope and Ban from Ringside for that specific deck. Vicky is a deck that I would see in a top 8 archetype. Vicky's a strong archetype.
That
You say again, if when in doubt whether you want to go SmackDown or Raw, to go Raw. NXT is now an option as well. If you have path either way, I am not turning down Takeover.
and that ties into what I was talking about Bash. I've made a lot of Bash NXT decks because Bash already can't pack Raw or SmackDown.
Yeah.
So it's easy to throw the NXT Allegiance into a Bash deck.
Yeah. And they get the protection.
And the Bash moves are usually pretty big.
Yeah.
So you get Morrow and I like that.
Yeah. But going back to the Raw Allegiance, Mike will tell you every time I reveal a female superstar, it's almost guaranteed to be Premier Raw superstar.
Mike and I talked about that actually when I was telling him that I finally sat down and finished my Shayna Baszler deck, and I took some inspiration from when I played Mike, but I didn't go NXT Allegiance, which I think you did, right? Your Shayna's NXT?
On that build, yes. I've got 2 builds. That one is.
And I went Raw, and he's like, I can't ever do Raw with a female because of Heaven. But it was just because I wanted to beat you Raw Throwback. Like, I didn't play Premier Raw with her. I didn't play yeah, I know. I didn't need to rebuild my Charlotte deck with Shayna Baszler cards.
Right, that's the problem.
And I love Beat You Raw as a card. Like that card is just, in my opinion, an amazing card that I don't see played enough.
That was another thing we wanted to do with V11 was kind of consequences for reversing or like Puncher's Chance and Beat You Raw both have effects when your card is unsuccessful.
Yep.
Which there hasn't been a lot of that in the game.
I love effects like that.
That kind of, double-edged sword, damned if you do, damned if you don't kind of a thing.
Yep.
Where, your opponent really has to decide, is it worth them getting 5 fortitude or me overturning 5 cards?
It's what drew me to Kevin Owens. I
always
love
overturn.
Yeah, Mike reversed Beat You Raw Throwback against me twice. I got more damage out of that maneuver than I did when it was successful.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what led me to really enjoying Kevin Owens is I love decks that make your opponent make hard choices.
Yeah.
And he definitely makes you make hard choices.
He doesn't care what choice you make. It's going to be hard anyway.
I've seen a lot. I have not seen much of like him, really him. Like, I'm surprised at how little like people look at him. Unless it was just like, he was big for a while, so nobody wants to play. He was like the boogeyman deck.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of it. When he first came out was kind of when I got back into the game. and he was everywhere because he was so powerful. He still is so
Yeah.
powerful. But with more stuff comes out, some people just kind of, it's not that they get worse, it's just that they get kind of forgotten.
Pushed to the bottom. Yeah.
Like I have my own list of like tiers, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. So I can go through my tier 1 and we can talk about them
Sure.
if you want.
Sure.
It's in alphabetical order, so it's not really like the best deck ever.
And I'm curious where the three of us will agree and disagree.
Yeah, and this is just,
Your personal one.
mine based on who I've played as or who I've played against.
Mhm.
And
So the
we've
first-
played a lot of the shares as well.
Yeah. So the first one in tier 1 is Arn Anderson.
I have no idea what he does.
So
He-
good. So
yeah.
good.
So
Hang on. I'm gonna pull
Arn
up my
An-
octagon while you talk, then I will look.
Arn Anderson's ability on the surface it's like, okay, his busters and his knee maneuvers and something else, spine maybe, they're -4 fortitude and +4 damage.
Okay.
So you can't restricted use them to elbow
Yeah.
it.
And
It's just,
his spine buster, is it his maneuvers or his cards with those titles?
I think maneuvers.
So he
I
doesn't
think.
get spine buster at 6 for 10. Got it.
Yeah, not as a reversal. But then it's also like those cards are also WCW.
Oh, so he's just the WCW allegiance is probably my favorite allegiance.
Yeah, so combine WCW allegiance with that, and your opponent is discarding a card whenever you
Yeah.
successfully play a move. Also, his backstage card lets him, when he successfully plays one of those moves, he can either recover 2 cards from his ringside or 4 non-reversals.
That's really good. Holy
So
crap.
opponent's discarding and you're recovering. On top of that, a lot of the moves in his ability are blank. So he makes for a really good drawing a blank deck.
Yeah.
On top of that, he gets Brainbusters cards, and Brainbusters have really good support.
And he gets the horseman card.
And he gets the Horseman stuff.
Yep.
He has one of the best mid-match reversals in the game. He has just so
And it's
much.
reusable.
He has so much stuff crammed into one superstar.
And it's all,
Holy
it
smokes.
all just works together. So good.
Yeah,
This mid-match
it's-
reversal is absurd.
it's
Yeah.
Arn Anderson might be the deck that when I see my opponent reveal it, I know I'm really going to be frustrated this game.
I do remember seeing a report from one of the first tournaments that I got that I like when I first came back was I think it was Arn Anderson versus somebody else, and that game took like 4 hours, and it was just it was just a recursion nightmare.
Right. Yeah. He's really good.
Yeah. I've been looking at another WCW deck. I might look at it.
Well, he's the best one.
He's
Trust
a
me.
legend too. He
Absolutely.
gets legend support too.
Yeah. He's the best WCW deck, in my opinion.
All right.
The 4 Horsemen are also a very good WCW deck, but I think Arn edges them out just a little bit. The next superstar on my tier list is Batista.
Very
Batista-
simple. I have a Batista deck built.
Yeah. Batista, ever since he came out, getting a 0 fortitude spine buster, that's really good.
Mhm.
On top of that, he doesn't take reversal damage,
Mhm.
which is also really good. So he can kind of freely throw these moves. He's not really tied down to any particular meta.
Nope.
You can go volley Batista, you can go chain, but you can go bash Batista. And virtual has only made him better.
His backstage cards are so good. The one that makes your first Batista action or your Batista action not reversible and you don't end your turn.
Yeah.
Like, okay, so you can only reverse them with sidewalk slam, or like the other 2 specific cards are reversed, cannot be reversed. I don't take damage from them, and I don't end my turn.
Yeah.
And I have my actions, which are absurdly good, And I have the evolution actions, which are really good. Like, yeah.
And if the shit hits a fan, you have Unleashed Bomb,
Unleash Bomb. Yep.
which is 9 fortitude that you just get.
Yep. And then you have a mid-match action reversal that can only be played from the ringside, or you just play it as a 5 fortitude maneuver and say, "Are you going to let me just have it from my ringside?"
Yeah. And Batista's not someone I've seen in a long time.
I have him built. I have not played him in a
Agreed.
while. I need to relook at him.
I've never actually seen Batista since Classic, to be honest.
Ooh.
I think I'll have to build
But then
Batista just to
I
see.
goes
I'll send
back
you over
to-
my list and see what you think.
That goes back to like a generic SmackDown deck. He greatly benefits from ban for ringside.
And from ringside, absolutely.
Running
I mean-
spineless, you reverse it. Okay, on the bottom, we'll search it again next turn.
Yep.
I mean, Batista would make a good back by Vicky deck.
Yeah.
Because the hardest part for Vicky is getting started. But if you have a 0 for 6 reversal that hits half the moves in the game,
Yeah.
there's starting fortitude for you.
hmm
Next superstar I have is Brock Lesnar.
I have not seen a Brock Lesnar in a long time. I've seen Beast Incarnate, but I've not seen Brock Lesnar.
I mean, Brock Lesnar, it's really all about his backstage. Being able to pick up a non-hybrid maneuver from ringside for free every turn is really good. Brock
I think
Lesnar,
is the only is the only reversal restriction maneuver that's not hybrid.
Yeah.
That is hybrid, sorry.
yeah.
So just
Brock,
Germans, atomic lariats, just everything.
Jim Haymaker, yeah.
Whew.
Brock Lesnar could have nothing other than his backstage and like collegiate champions and F5, and he'd still be really good.
And there's one backstage where he gets the reveal after they've reversed your collegiate.
Yeah.
Yeah, those two cards are really good.
When I was at the North American Championship a couple years ago that Eric put together in Canada, I played against Crasher in the semifinals. He was Samoa Joe and I was Brock Lesnar. And I activated Collegiate Champs and he used Unscrupulous. So I got to reveal.
Oh, you got the benefits? You got both worlds.
So he thought the effect was when Collegiate is removed from your ring.
Not just reversed.
Not just reversed.
Oh, geez.
And that ended up being, swinging the game in my favor.
Yeah.
And I ended up winning that game. But yeah, Brock Lesnar is so good. His
So-
arsenal cards, he's got a couple arsenal cards that aren't really worth packing, in my opinion. But all
Yeah,
of his backlash cards and his backstage,
Mhm.
and he's got F5 and Kimura.
Yep.
Like he's got some really good stuff going on.
Um,
Plus, if your opponent is a volley deck or a foreign object deck,
they're gonna hate you.
right?
And of course, there's the bonus. So backstage warm-up routine being the worst worded card in the world.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
At the end of the pre-match phase, if your opponent has a lower Ursa value than you, starting hand size is -2, or reverse for +2. Okay, so when do I get that?
Yeah.
Um,
It was. I think Virtual did a errata
yeah,
just to say, you know what? No.
it just happens after the pre-match phase. After all
Um,
pre-matches are played. So now with Brock Lesnar, so my buddy has a Beast Incarnate deck built. Which do you think they're interchangeable in that spot, or do you think Brock over Beast Incarnate? Because Beast Incarnate's backstage card that removes reversal restrictions is really good.
Super good.
I still say Brock, but Beast is, he's also really good. But I think Brock has more versatility.
Okay.
He's another one like Batista. You can build Brock in any way because he can just keep. He might be the best throw moves deck in the game because he can just keep throwing the
argue that.
same move, and he has collegiate champions.
Yeah, specifically that backstage card makes him an absurd throw moves. He'd be a really good puncher's chance deck.
Sure. Yeah.
Really good. The Smoke and Skull title is probably better for him than it is for Austin or
And he-
Rattlesnake.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
had my Lesnar that I brought to the North American Championship. It was backed by Vicky, and I used the smoking skull belt to get pump kick and German suplex. And I also had backstage shenanigans. So I usually got the first two turns. I would start with pump kick, and then I would use collegiate, get rid of a reversal. And if they didn't have reversal, I would just throw a regular German suplex with no restriction. And if they don't have something in their hand, they're probably not packing backlash.
Yeah. You mentioning backstage shenanigans kind of leads me on a quick tangent before we go back to the tier list. One observation that I've seen that I'm curious if it goes into this tournament is something that I generally keep in mind. I have seen a lot of people, without really considering it, without thinking about it, just windmill slam all of their backstage cards, all the 5 generic ones, and they're like, and I sit there and I'm like, do you just not care if you don't take 2 turns in the start of the game? Like, okay. Like the lack of fear of backstage shenanigans kind of blows my mind.
Mm-hmm.
And
For
I
me,
don't.
it depends. Generally, they'll get slapped on the table. If my superstar value is 2, they will not all be slapped on the table.
Mhm.
Because I need underrated superstar. My worry isn't about getting backstage shenanigans. My worry is about them not lowering my value.
Sure.
Only packing the value modifiers, and I do reveal the value modifiers, my value is going to go to 3, and I won't get it.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's fair. There are decks where I will just play all of them. I'll reveal all of them. It's like I need to reveal all of them, or I need to reveal this one that is opening me up to shenanigans anyway, so I might as well reveal all of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just kind of deal with it at that point. But it's like if I don't need to, like, so that's the interesting thing with the decks that I've been building, the females that I've been building, Era the Superstar. I'm like, one, why doesn't this card say it's superstar specific? But it's like
But you also don't have to reveal it.
you don't. I guess that's fair. You don't have to reveal
The
it.
cards
You just
say
need
it
to
can
pack
only be
it.
packed when packing Era the Superstar.
Yeah. I think the only benefit you get from revealing it is the
You
minus
don't
2
count as a
fortitude.
and you don't count as a woman for his
Oh.
effects.
Right.
But
Yeah.
for non-superstar specific effects, so the best one, Gentleman's Establishment, still hits.
So a card I've been packing more recently is Distractingly Divalicious. So if my opponent
That's
makes
good.
me skip my first turn, on their first turn, they don't get to play cards. I
Yep.
skip my turn. On their second turn, they don't get to play cards. So
That's fair.
essentially,
That's
I
fair.
get the first turn.
In those kind of decks, definitely playing revealing all of them is good.
Yeah. Also, old school wrestling match throwback also
Yep.
prevents turn skipping. So that's.
I'm not saying there aren't decks that shouldn't just reveal all of them.
But yeah, you're right.
I think a lot of decks that I've seen reveal all of them without protection or a game plan. And like my Kevin Owens deck, I've told you this before, Evan. I'm like, there's a dream scenario where I take the first 3 turns of the game.
Yeah.
And what do you do against that? Like, you don't get 3 turns.
You cry. You cry.
Yeah. Like, I have a mini never gonna stop me for 3 turns.
Yeah. At the beginning.
At the beginning of the game.
The most important part of the game.
Yeah.
Next superstar on my list is Charlotte.
She is on my list of deck I might play for the tournament.
Yeah, and I've spoken with both of you because both of you, when I first said that Charlotte was top tier, you're both like, "What?"
And look at her ability. I'm like, her ability's terrible.
She doesn't get anything, and I was like, "Okay." So then I played Mike, and it was like a frustrating Charlotte game, and he was like, "All right."
Well, the start of the game is more like I'm still not seeing the big deal here because for the first half of the game I was stomping you.
And then the chop comes out.
As Charlotte's chop became more.
Yep,
more
Charlotte's chop comes out.
Every time it keeps coming back,
And then of course it's me. It's me, so it was Premier Raw Superstar Charlotte.
Yep.
So that's just more discard. And I use pick a brand throwback, so my specifics are all
I
raw.
also have that build.
Yeah.
He just
So,
gave me
you
the
know.
idea. I built the rest of the deck myself.
But she's one of those. She's a prime example of don't go by their ability alone.
Yep.
Read the rest of their stuff. Her arsenal specifics are stupid.
So good. So good. And Daughter of the Nature Boy might have one of the most impactful aces of a lot of superstar specific pre-matches.
Yeah.
That card is really good.
Yeah.
Just playing it and removing the top 4 cards of your opponent's arsenal from the game, like just off the bat. And then it's like, oh, I have less fortitude than you. We'll kill that card and that card and that card and that card. And oh, if I know you have a don't try, well, I'm just gonna play Charlotte's Flair's Chop until I hit it.
Yeah.
Because I'm hitting a random card every turn.
When played.
Yeah.
When played.
It's so good. And you can play it multiple times a turn, which is absurd.
You can play it multiple times a game because she can remove her specifics.
I had a game where I ended up playing it 3 times in a turn because it was successful. I sent it to the bottom with the backstage card. Or no, it wasn't 3 times. Was it? No, it was twice a turn. Sorry. It was successful. I sent it to the bottom. I played her backlash card that searches for 2 non-hybrid maneuvers, and I searched for it again. I played it again. And I'm like, okay, and it's raw, so discard a random one. It's successful. Discard another card.
The next 2 superstars on my tier list we kind of talk about already. It was Dean Malenko and Kevin Owens.
Can't argue with those.
Yeah, I don't think we need to dig deeper into them. It's just they both have really good effects. The next one I know will get a reaction from Mike, and that's the New Age Outlaws, which I think, in my opinion, they are the biggest NPE deck in Raw Deal.
Really?
For me.
Oh wait, no, never mind. I was thinking DX. No, you are 100% correct. Yes, we have looked at them and like these guys are absurd.
Yeah. They basically shut your opponent out from being able to reverse your moves.
Yeah.
Basically shut your opponent out from being able to play the game.
Pretty much. I think they're a bit much. I wouldn't be surprised if they get a revision sooner rather than later. I think they're just they're not they're close to being balanced, but I think right now they are unbalanced.
I would agree.
Because I had a New Age Outlaws deck that was a pretty generic volley deck. But I used Managed by Lita and Stun the Crowd. And most of the volley moves have stun anyway.
Yep.
So I'm removing 4 in my hand to make my volley move only reversible from Arsenal, which there's really nothing you can do about it.
But you're replenishing your hand so quickly.
Right. If you reverse from Arsenal, I'm drawing 1 for Lita. If you reverse from Arsenal, I'm drawing at least 2 stun values, sometimes 3.
And then you'll draw for your turn next turn.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will 100% agree that they are not balanced at this point.
And that's the thing. It's like they could, even with a revision, they're still probably going to be top tier because they have really good support.
Yep.
Agreed.
They get Road Dogg and Billy Gunn cards.
And the tag team.
And their
tag team. And them having a 4 hand size actually benefits them because they can play Buying Myself Some Time.
Yeah.
Which is another card that I don't think sees enough play. And their maneuvers are undouchebaggable.
Yes.
Yep.
Ridiculous.
Because it's from an ability, not from a card.
Yep.
Jeez.
And unrestricted usable, unforleatable,
and they get 3 trademark finishers.
Yep. And they get Juke and Jive, which is Juke and Jive is a good card.
They get One and Only Famouser and Doggy Pump Handle Slam. They get Tori Enters the Fray.
And China Enters the Fray, which is their specific one.
Right. Yeah.
They have 2 reverse. They have a reverse any maneuver and a reverse any card. Jesus.
Yeah, they're really good.
Yeah.
Ryback is next on my list. He's another one where you see Ryback on the other side of the table, you're just like, oh, come on. Why?
That pre-match.
If I see my opponent playing Ryback, see my opponent is playing Ryback, I'm just like, thing that pops into my head is just you don't want to have fun playing this game.
Yep.
The only thing you're interested in is winning. And
Can't argue
So
that.
I played against Eric in the finals of the North American Championship. The match is on YouTube. It was my Brock Lesnar against his Ryback. Two of my top tier guys.
Now that I know that's you, I'm gonna have to go back and rewatch that video.
And his Ryback was volley, and I'm Brock Lesnar. And I lost.
I just, yeah.
To
Oh,
be
boy.
fair, one, Eric's a really good player. Two, I made at least 2 or 3 mistakes in that game that watching it back, I was like, what was I thinking?
What
Like
was
if
I doing?
it was one of those things where if I say go, I win. Because I had like 40 fortitude and I had F5 in my backlash and I had Kimura in my hand.
Mhm.
So I was like, if he plays anything, I win.
Yeah.
But I got greedy and I tried to play simply the best to get rid of his fortitude, and he hit me with Ryback's 15 damage action reversal or whatever it is.
Oof.
But I'm not bitter, so.
Not at all.
But yeah, Ryback gets
Yeah. That
he gets
pre-match is just
ridiculous support.
absurd.
He gets ridiculous support. All of his cards are -4 fortitude cards.
Yep.
Um,
And he plunges you.
he can, yeah, yep. His ability is
He has an ability.
good. Yeah, right.
Oh, yeah.
It's good, but it's not necessary. He basically he gets like a pseudo Rey Mysterio kind of ability.
Right.
Because Rey Mysterio and Ryback are so alike.
Right.
His and his backstage card, like he gets rewarded for playing the pre-matches that like make you discard cards.
Yeah.
He's guaranteed a 12 starting hand, isn't he?
Uh-huh.
10. I think it's 10 now.
It was changed to 10. Yeah.
It was 12, and now it's 10.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I had him when I had him built before his revision, I had him bash. I didn't even use the it's time for the Great American Bashes because all my cards are -4 fortitude anyway. So my pre-match was like Ryback rules, and I think it was I'm gonna break you, and I think that was the only pre-match I played.
Yeah. Break you's
So-
another card that doesn't see a lot of play anymore.
Just because there's a lot.
Yeah.
There's a lot that goes against it now, but yeah. But if you're not prepared for a break you, oof.
Yeah.
Oof.
The game is the next on my list.
Will 100% agree.
He's great. He's
As
great.
somebody that plays him, 100% agree.
See, but I think he is like perfectly where he should be.
Absolutely. He doesn't
I
do
agree.
anything broken.
Right.
I think he, like, when I'm speaking about like different superstars and stuff, and I'm saying, okay, this guy's great, this guy's too much, all the rest of it, I put the game is the standard bearer. He is exactly how I feel, how strong. That's how strong the strongest superstar should be. If they're any stronger than that, they might be a bit too much.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think he's kind of that gold standard of, if the game gets stomped by someone, that someone is probably doing a bit too much.
Yep.
Or the game player is terrible.
Yeah. Or that.
I also like, I like it when the top superstars in real life wrestling are the top superstars in Raw Deal.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, we want everyone in Raw Deal to be balanced.
Right.
But it makes sense that the game is at the top of Raw Deal.
Yeah, I agree. 100%.
It makes sense that Brock Lesnar is near the top.
Yep.
Yes.
And I think the game is top tier. I think he's always been top tier.
His virtual support was very good.
Right. He was top tier when he came out. His virtual support made him better.
Yep.
But he's not overwhelming. He's beatable.
Yep.
It's difficult, but he is beatable, and that's fine.
And like even with my list, like I know, and you can go a bunch of different ways with him too. You don't have to go the way that I did of the super hand destruction in the pre-match. Sure, he leans to it because of the Triple H pre-match, but even if you're not prepared for that and you are susceptible to the 0 starting hand, you can still play against it. Like you can
absolutely.
still like cards like evening up the odds, which we've talked about this, should probably be in more decks. There are ways to come back from that and still give it a good game. Now, you can have some games where that's a blowout, and that's just what happens. But I 100% agree that nothing he does is broken.
A lot of, like, he's got a lot of cards that are just like, I've seen Triple H game King of Kings players pack cards that I wouldn't even think about packing. Like flip over corner ring post.
I pack it. It's good.
I wouldn't.
Yeah.
Just my thing.
Shuffle, draw 2, discard 1. I'm fine with it.
No for me. He's just so many specifics that it's just that one just doesn't quite make the cut.
I don't pack the pedigree.
Oh, but I do pack pedigree.
Yeah, there you go.
A lot of the time, Facebuster doesn't make a cut, and Classic it never made the cut.
Right.
It makes the cut for me now because of his backstage card, the one that lets you play it as a grapple, and because I'm already playing like you shouldn't have a hand to start the game. If I don't draw the bring the hammer down, I draw the Facebuster, I can at least still get the 10 fortitude.
Yeah.
I don't pack the pedigree because my finisher says trademark or says strike for an object.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I remember that video. And for the longest time, unless there's a way that you can play it to ignore the Irish whip crap, Leave a Knee doesn't make a cut either.
Does not, definitely not in my list. Cerebral Spray made it possible for like Triple H decks.
I've never played Cerebral Spray. Never.
But I can't justify playing that card just for Leaping Knee because like then you're building around an Irish whip deck and then that opens up to a whole bunch of other pain reversals.
I think I've only used Cerebral Spray in DX. I don't think I've ever used it in Triple H or the game.
Yeah, that's fair. But then his actions, like Triple H's actions are absurdly good, and getting them the first one at Fortitude 0 and making it chain.
There's not. Is there one that doesn't get put to 0? 2.
There's one that because it's all about control is raw.
Yep.
And there's another one that's a hybrid. Or no, I'm sorry. There's Screw the Rules. Screw the Rules is raw, so it doesn't get the chain, but it's already 0 fortitude.
No one packs that anyway.
It's all about control, raw. And then he has one that's a hybrid. It's the evolution one.
Adapt or Perish.
Yes, that one. Other than that, yeah, they're all 0 fortitude and chain.
The game is top tier, and he's right where he should be.
I agree.
The next one on my list is the New Day.
I've built them. I've played against them once. I've never played again. Like I didn't struggle against the deck at all. I've built them, but I've never actually played them. I have never played the deck
against them a few times. I don't know if I can say they're top tier.
I think, in my opinion, they are. I think anytime you can get your opponent to discard 5 off a spit of the opponent, and your card gets put on the bottom instead of being discarded, that's good for anyone, especially paired with Abraham Washington. And
then they have their one pre-match, like just stops the first time your opponent would draw cards during the pre-match, right?
Yep. So they stomp on underrated.
NXT takeover.
Yeah.
Because it gets around the protection.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, shuffle your cards in. All right, you don't draw any.
They are a stable, so they get handicap match against everyone.
Yep.
That isn't a stable.
Providing the pocket numbers game.
Yeah. Their support, their specifics are really good. Plus, they get either fan favorite and cheater or face and heal.
Yep. Which
leads you to a whole bunch of other stuff. They make a really good blindside deck. I think, if you play against the right New Day deck, you're going to be really frustrated.
That's fair.
But they probably are on the lower end.
I probably put them at high tier 2 for me, like high tier 2, like tier 1.5. I can't put them up into the tier 1, but they're definitely better than tier 2.
The second to last on my tier 1 is Yokozuna, who we kind of spoke about. He gets 75 cards. He gets all the Cornet support. He has really good arsenal cards. He gets 3 fortitude at the start of the game. and he has his own superstar specific super sustained. He gets everything good.
Yeah.
He takes forever to kill, and he kills you quickly. So
I have not personally played as or against the Yokozuna deck, but just from theory crafting and looking at him, I can definitely agree with that. And just from like the things that I've heard as far as like, oh yeah, Yokozuna is like really good now.
yeah, he's beatable, but like I said, it's very difficult. And he's Yokozuna, so he should be difficult to beat. I think he lost like 3 matches total his entire career. um,
So my tier 1, if I was to do, I'm not going to go through like a list like that, but superstars that I would add into tier 1, rated RKO.
yeah, they're kind of different.
Yeah.
They're
And
true
it's
hero.
specifically because I have mentioned on the last time we talked about this, Never Gonna Stop Me needs shenanigans, in my opinion. It absolutely should not work like it does. It should either just be blank or do something else.
Yeah.
Because ending your opponent's turn before they ever get to take their turn, and they can do it infinitely, and they can constantly replay it until it's successful. It's just too much. And they get to play it cheaper than it is.
Yeah.
Fabulous Moolah. Her ability
That's interesting.
is so absurdly good. If you build the deck to just be a sponge deck, you will kill your opponent by not doing anything.
Well, it doesn't sound very fun though.
Huh?
It doesn't sound very fun though.
It's not. So when I'm talking about a competitive tier 1 list, I'm talking about the best decks. Sometimes they're not the most fun. I will agree that these are 2 very NPE decks. I will, as a rated RKO player, I will 100% agree that rated RKO is not fun. It's not fun for me to play.
Your freaking hero was the last on my tier 1.
Do you play him with the storyline?
Yeah,
Of course.
That's what we were doing too. Just couldn't super get it to work, but that was also when we first started getting back into the game. So I think if we kind of put our knowledge into it now, we could.
yeah. He gets hand knowledge from the start of the game. He
Draw
draws
2
2 a
cards a
turn,
turn.
and his moves are +3 damage.
Yeah.
And that's just part of what he gets.
Yep.
He also gets collegiate champions. He gets his feud, which is at very least +2 mid-match.
Mhm.
He's another one of those guys who's not tied anymore. He's not tied to any specific build.
Yeah.
So you can build him volley. You can build him, Vicky. You can build him good time, whatever you want, really.
Yeah.
Well, it can be anything but chain because he's going to get no benefit.
Right.
And he's probably not going to be raw because he has
Yeah.
a couple SmackDown cards, but it's not unheard of.
Just starting with the 3 eyes in play is just really good.
Yeah. I mean, he does basically everything Bobby Heenan does better.
Yeah.
He's not a legend. That's about it.
There's two names that I'm thinking that would be tier 1 now. One would maybe be at tier 1.5 along with the New Day, would be Baron Corbin.
I've not seen him since his new support, but I've heard it's good.
I have him in tier 2.
He would probably be, with the decks I've got built, he's probably my best deck. He's not the deck I enjoy playing the most, but he's probably my best deck.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Just smash.
Yeah.
And he's based around playing like RMS maneuvers, right? So it's hard to deal with RMS maneuvers.
Yeah, especially.
And he can also play them from ringside. And they're kind of chained now as well.
That's a good effect. Yeah.
And kind of volley.
Kind of. And he gets recovery when they're successful, and he gets the promo when they're not successful.
And he also gets to grab one when they're successful as well.
Yeah.
For ringside.
And he's NXT.
Oh, yes. So he gets all the NXT support too. Jesus. Okay.
And he might be the best precision haymaker deck in the game.
He absolutely is the
Havoc is
best.
a hell of a
Decision maker
card.
deck.
Hell of a card.
Absolutely the best deck for that card in the game, without a doubt. And the other one is the only other deck that I find to be more of an NPE than the New Age Outlaws. 2-1 Power Trap.
Hmm.
I've been looking at them. I didn't know if they were super NPE. Like getting all of their superstar specific reversals for less fortitude is really good. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it.
I feel it's one of those decks that if you're playing as a 2-man Power Trap, it's because you want to play by yourself and you do not want your opponent to play the game.
I haven't played against them relatively recently. So it's hard for me to.
Yeah.
They're in my tier 2. And I wouldn't be surprised if they are a solid tier 1. It's just I haven't seen them in a while, so it's
Yeah.
a little more difficult for me to commit to that. But
a 1.5 that I would probably add, I don't think they're tier 1, but I think they're tier 2. They're better than tier 2 is the Vaudevillains. And of course, I'm a little biased about that, but their V11 support, I definitely think bumped them up the list heavily. Especially with NXT Allegiance Takeover support plus their new backstage cards. Just really, really strong superstars now. And classic maneuvers just keep getting better.
yeah, they are, they definitely got a big boost. I don't think they're as unbeatable as some of the other guys in tier 1, but
yeah, that's why I don't think they're good enough to be in tier 1, but I think they're better than tier 2.
I mean, I think for similar reasons, Carlito and Primo Cologne, I personally think they're probably a little bit better than the Vaudevillains because their backstage effects are pretty similar.
Yeah.
I think their support, the Cologne support, is really good, and they get guaranteed fortitude.
They might be the one. They're probably the best Vicky deck in the game.
Better than Leader of the Edge Army?
I was thinking about
I'm like, Leader's a really good Vicky deck.
I was just thinking, are they the best, or is it somebody that gets the
Vicky support?
La Familia managed by Vicky stuff.
Yeah, if you don't count like the
Clones,
superstar specific Vicky guys.
The clones are just guaranteed at fortitude. They're guaranteed the fortitude to start playing the Vicky stuff.
Face stretch, guaranteed.
Yep.
That starts all the 40. You don't need more than 8 fortitude.
You can do a lot with 8.
Yeah.
So they're probably the best generic Vicky deck. Like that doesn't have the superstar support that's changing it.
Probably.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, they might be.
Just playing your superstar specifics as Vicky like protected is really good.
But the colognes,
and they with Dolph as well.
The colognes, when your move is unsuccessful, you recover 2 and draw 1, or you draw 2 and recover 1, or whatever it is.
That's really good.
But also, they get discounted and hard to reverse spitted opponent.
Yep, and they get the apple.
They get the apple. They get the cabana.
I said this when I was playing against Evan a few weeks ago when he was using the colognes. The apple's just dumb.
Apple's really good.
Especially because you can use it more than once as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they have a way to unhide it, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm. My typical start for them is to use the apple, get rid of opponents. Don't try this at home. Use Ace the Cabana to get a face stretch.
Mm-hmm.
Play face stretch. They'll usually play, reach grasp on it. I use my ability to overturn 5, and I have 8 fortitude.
Yep.
The end.
It's a good play. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a really solid starting point for where we kind of see the top tier decks and why they're there. So I think a lot of the times when we're going into what makes a deck really, really strong, it's how well they can execute the game plan that you're building. And a lot of the superstars that that we mentioned, one, have very open avenues. They can do a lot of different things. So then it just comes down to building the deck to utilize your strategy more. And I think this is kind of where people get tripped up, is they want to focus on, well, if I encounter this, 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 and this, and less of how do I maximize what my deck is trying to do.
Yeah. I always tell people to make your opponent adjust to you. Because a lot of times someone will be like, I want to build this superstar, but what if my opponent has this? Well, they're not always going to have that. You know, like you don't build scared. You know, don't
Exactly.
You know, every deck has its weaknesses.
Yep. Don't build for the answer, make your opponent have the answer.
Right, yeah. If you set the tone, set the pace, then that's just one more advantage you have.
Yep. And the more decisions you make your opponent make in a game, the more likely they are to make the wrong decision.
The one thing that I try to do when I'm building is, yes, you play more to build up your own deck as opposed to try and counter your opponents. If I'm looking at something, if I'm looking at my deck, and I'll go back to my Shayna Baszler deck, and it's gotten, okay, this is a hole in this deck. I could be hit with ringside removal in this deck, and it would be a bad time. I am going to play that old school cage match because it's not hurting anything else for my strategy. So it is not going to hurt my deck in the slightest, and it's going to be a layer of protection for me if my opponent's got NWO poison.
Yep.
I can get rid of one card instead of two, so I'm protecting those chokes.
Your deck should always have a few slots that are generally referred to as flex spots. They're your more like tech cards, and those should be what shore up your deck's weakness. So like using Undisputed Era as an example, I run 2 Get Back in the Rings because I'm a sponge deck and I'm going to lose to win by pinfall victory. So I run cards that say your opponent can't play those cards. The deck is weak against old school cage match, but I have to have ways of dealing with it. Luckily I have my ability that lets me kind of get around it a little bit, but my deck doesn't get to operate on all cylinders against it. As Mike saw, like I could have easily put back 30, 40 more cards over the course of that game if I could have put my thrust knee list and kidney punches back.
Yes.
But don't let one card stop you from building a deck. Even if it's like, oh, well, this is a terrible matchup. Build the deck. Hell, even play against the card. Learn how to play against it.
Yeah.
Unless you're absolutely going to lose the Hell in a Cell, then pack Making Your Escape and don't be stupid.
Or just pack managed by Vince, managed by Stephanie. There's plenty of pre-match manager alone. Or alternatively, be a GM.
Or be Vince.
I'm going to be a GM.
Yeah.
Yeah,
you know, I always, I don't always want my deck to be just one thing. Even if my deck is a volley deck, I want to throw in a couple chain moves just to throw it off. Or I want, once I get started with this, then I'll switch to this, I have a couple decks that are Blindside and Vicky. Like I'll start with Blindside and then I'll end with Vicky.
Yeah. Your opponent can only stop you so many ways.
Yeah. And it all depends on who your superstar is and also who their superstar is. And that's the beauty of the game.
Yep.
Is, no 2 decks are really the same. Even a deck with the same cards, I play it differently than Mike plays it.
Yeah.
But that's the thing, as Billy mentioned about the Blindside stuff. Like, I think as time goes on, people are going to start appreciating the new Blindside engine a bit more, and we're going to start seeing just a fraction of the new Blindside engine as an alternative way to get started. But it's like, for a lot of decks, like recently I've been mostly just playing with Devin, so I didn't see it too much. But when I play other people, the majority of the time it's flawless quick snap, and for a long time the way it gets started,
that was the start.
I think now it's going to be more of a case of it's going to change, it's going to move on, and it's going to be the blind side is going to be your opener, because it's, to be honest, it's a better
It's a great
opener.
opener. It's harder to
Yeah.
stop.
And, there's nothing to stop you from using both.
True.
You can go brutal blindside beating, blindside hook, next turn, flawless quick snap.
Yeah.
That's 10 really difficult to reverse fortitude.
Yep.
Yep.
And
But you do let your opponent draw a card.
Yeah.
not if you play brutal blindside beating. It gets rid of the. Oh
No,
no,
they
do
still
get to draw.
they still draw.
It gets rid of the you remove the card from the hand. Yeah.
But if you're Kane, let him draw.
I've now just been looking for all the cards that say your opponent draws a card. I'm packing throwback restricted use in this area. Throwback manager interferes.
Yep.
Throwback manager interference is great for Dangerous Alliance.
Yeah. It's really good for Kane too. It does 3 damage.
At least.
Yeah. So kind of circling back, one superstar I think we missed in the tier 1 list is Kairi Sane.
Right. She's also in that rated RKO kind
The
of.
NP, yes, needs a revision.
And like I said in the last video, she is going to get she is going to get a slight revision. Nothing major, but she'll
just
be
something
balanced.
to bring her back in line.
Yeah.
But on the deck building kind of side of the discussion, I think two other things that I think newer builders or even like some more experienced players could shore up in their skill set as far as builders is, one, focus on your pre-match. Don't just take your pre-match for granted. We as my play group of 3 guys, me, Pat, and our friend Sean, the pre-match is probably the most important part of the game. You can win and lose in your pre-match. That's why Summer of Slam Throwback is such a good card. Because you can just win in back. I personally believe Backlash Destruction is the hardest thing to recover from.
Yeah.
Because your backlash is so important. So don't take your pre-match for granted. Build around your strategy and don't just play cards to play cards. Don't play a card just because it's got a damage modifier. Damage doesn't matter in this game. Your maneuver's going to get reversed on the overturn.
Right. Damage is any damage above like 10 is arbitrary.
Yep. Get to a break point that you need to activate effects, like Morrow, like 10 damage for Morrow. Good.
Although I did hit 19 unreversed damage against Mike the other day.
I have seen a suicide strike go all the way through.
And
19 unreversed.
it was a dynamic. It was a dynamic move, I believe. We can't talk about who it was because they haven't been spoiled yet. But
okay. Oh wait, I think I know who it was then.
Yeah. You know.
Okay.
The other deck building advice that I'm going to give, and this one's a little hard for a lot of people. Just because it has your superstar's logo on it doesn't mean you have to pack it. There are bad superstar specific cards that just don't need to be packed. Just because your card is a trademark finisher doesn't mean you have to pack it. A lot of the trademark finishers are bad.
Trademark finishers can only be played after a successful play maneuver.
Yeah. Now there are trademark finishers that are really hard to play, but have great effects. Like the Future Shock DDT blew my mind when I read that card.
That card will never be played.
Yeah, that card blew my mind when I read it.
Its effect will be used all the time.
The execution, where if it's in your ring side, you can put it at the bottom and draw an additional card during your draw segment. Like, I want to see more trademarks like that. I want to see more effects like that. Go ahead.
Concerto is ludicrous to be able to play, but it's really good.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
You can only play it after an 8D or greater, but it can't be reversed, or something like that.
But if it is reversed, then
stuff happens.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's leapfrog stun gun, team angles, trademark finisher can only be reversed by uniques.
It's good.
Which it's less good in virtual because.
But it's hard to reverse a trademark finisher with without a unique card.
Manager interferes or sloppy doesn't hit it,
Yep. But I think that is something that I see as I see like newer players or even as I'm spectating decks. They're playing superstar specifics just because it has the logo.
Yes.
And I'm like, that doesn't need to be that way. And so I would implore to really evaluate the card better of am I going to play this card consistently? 2, does it do anything else for me? If it's a hybrid reversal, if it's a hybrid trademark that also reverses something, yeah, sure, pack it. Like I pack the pop-up power bomb. It's a great trademark finisher because it's got a great effect when you successfully play it. It has an irrelevant reversal text. That was a joke between me and my group of I just play people that have trademark finishers hybrids that are irrelevant. And really evaluate like the effect of the card of, is this better than another card I could be playing?
Right. So when I had my we talk about Brock Lesnar being tier 1, series of backbreakers, not worth packing.
Nope.
No.
He has the beat down by the beast or whatever it is, not really worth packing. One of the beast incarnate actions, it's a good action, but in competitive raw deal, you're never gonna hit an action. So I'd rather that be another face stretch or key lock or something that I can actually play.
Yeah.
That like when I went to the North American Championship, that was kind of my big thing. It's like I'm packing these Brock Lesnar cards because they have his logo on it. I didn't pack series of backbreakers, but the other action, I was like, I attempted to play this card twice. It was reversed twice.
And you felt bad every time, right?
Right, yeah. And it's like it's all shoot counter bait anyway, like But luckily, all of the virtual 12 specifics are worth playing.
So I think that's really all I've got to talk about as far as like where the competitive game is, and as far as like where I see the advice that I can give to other players, at least to kind of get into my mindset of how I build decks. I don't know if you guys have anything else to talk on that before we jump to the final topic of the day.
Just to go along with that, it's don't lose the game before you lose the game. Don't play angry.
Yep.
We talked about this a little bit in the last video that we did was, if your opponent gets rid of your entire starting hand on the first turn, don't play the game thinking, oh, I'm going to lose this game. Like still be competitive in the game because you might win.
Yeah.
The last tournament I played against Keith, I got rid of his entire hand on turn 1 and he destroyed me. So, don't ever think you're out of the game until the very end.
Just like when I played Mike, I'm like, if, I said to you before the game, I told you who I was going to play. I was going to play Undisputed Era. If I meet Old School Cage Match, fuck. And he drops, and Mike drops Old School Cage Match. And I'm like, I think I just lose. Because I hadn't played. I knew the card was a dagger to my deck, but I hadn't played against it. Okay. And we played through the game, and it was a hell of a close game too. And yeah, I managed to keep my cool the whole game, and
Adam Cole saved you.
Sure did. He sure did. Learning how my superstar works definitely helped.
Adam Cole does not care about drawing a blank.
Yep.
It was a damn good game.
It was a great game.
I would say as well is that like even if you're not playing competitively and kind of just playing amongst friends to try out this new deck that you've built, and your friend's trying out his deck that he's built, if he's doing better than you, don't just scoop because it's just a friendly game. It doesn't matter.
Learn from it.
Like learn and let your opponent learn what his deck does.
Yep.
Yeah.
He needs to learn what his deck does through at all points of the game, just like you need to do with yours. If you were winning that game, you wouldn't want your opponent to scoop either.
Yep. So the
Be a
only
bit more
times I will,
respectful of everybody's time.
there are certain circumstances where I will scoop. I've only scooped a few times. One, I will scoop if I know that the game is over. Like if we're in a spot where, like the 3 times that I've played Rated RKO in person, I've played Never Gonna Stop Me, it resolves. We went through the motions for 3 turns, showing that I could activate it every turn, and it's like, okay, game's over. The only other time is I played against my buddy's Mankind deck. It was a Hell in a Cell Mankind. He got like 2 judo checks out, and we were playing back and forth. I was playing Kevin Owens. I didn't have a way out of the cell because this was before I was packing Making You Escape Kevin Owens. I'm like, well, shit. We got down really close. He had 1 card in his opening hand. He trash talking interviewed. It was an oversell. I got rid of it. He drew. I played my pump kick. He drew the oversell. I'm like, and I reversed 3 faces of Foley. He aced Pallbearer, got 3 faces of Foley back. I couldn't reverse it again. I'm like, game's over. We've seen what your deck does. Game's over. I can't come back from this.
That's a different circumstance.
Absolutely.
I mean, like if I'm playing against somebody and or just say I'm playing against you, for example, and you're just stomping me, and I just say, Ken, it's maybe your 3rd turn or something. I've maybe got like 2 fortitude from an elbow to the face or something, but you've got 50 fortitude. It would be disrespectful. It would be disrespectful for me to say there's no point in playing this game because I am then wasting your time because you can't see what your deck does throughout all stages of the game.
And you can always, like, losing is not a bad thing. You will learn more about your deck and you as a player from your loss than you will from a win.
So yesterday I played Mike. I was IRS and he was Shayna. I was like, all right, we'll see. IRS can manipulate ring sides and blah blah blah. And I got smashed. I had no answer to drawing a blank. IRS has no specific reversals. Well, he has one that reverses an action, and I wasn't packing the counter reversals, so it's like I had nothing I could do to stop drawing a blank. So I just had to eat moves.
Yep.
I had some pretty generous overturned reversals, but
I was a few reversed on one.
But my deck was mainly volley, and I just had nothing I could do. The only successful move I played was Dirty Low Blow, and I think I ended the game with 6 or 8 fortitude or something like that. It's just I had nothing.
Yeah.
But and I knew I was going to lose, but I was like, you know what, we'll finish it out. Shane is smashing me, so it probably won't take a while. I mean, the game probably took 45 minutes. So
yeah,
it wasn't too much. And Mike and I are friends, so I'm not gonna just rage quit on him.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah, 100% agree. And to Mike's point of your opponent needs to see how his deck is going to operate as well if he's winning, because ending the game in Raw Deal is really difficult.
Well,
I was saying this to Evan the other day, and I think it was either Shayna or Alexa that I used the example with. They are absolutely brilliant at getting a start, but they have trouble ending the game.
Yep.
Well, that was it. That was yesterday's game. Mike had like 55 fortitude, but he was still the game slowed down at the end.
Right.
He started off so quickly, but then after he hit like 50 fortitude, it was just like, well, now he's just going to pain reverse me because he didn't have either for trademarks in his hand or anything like that. So it was just anything I played, he would just power slam or spine buster or whatever, But I've found myself packing Mania a bit more, which is fun.
I hate that card. I hate that card so much.
I don't pack it in everyone. But like decks that get high fortitude, I might throw a good night everyone in or a Mania.
Yeah. And on the topic of Mania, like with my Vaudevillains deck, I pack Crucifix Rollup in my backlash because when I built the deck, I'm like, I don't think I have enough damage to kill them twice. So I need to make sure I can kill them once.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing. Like if you're building, there's nothing wrong with building a straightforward throw maneuvers deck. Have a plan for when that doesn't work.
Yeah.
Yep.
Or have a plan against the sponge deck that's going to say, I will eat all of your maneuvers like it's breakfast.
Yep.
What are you going to do about it after that? Like my Vince deck that I built turned from a foreign object throw maneuvers deck to a sponge deck just by adding Rochester, New York. Like as soon as you add Rochester, New York, you become a sponge deck. And it's like I played against the Roderick Strong deck for my league. Roderick Strong had 115 fortitude. I had 12 and I won because it's like I got to 10 fortitude. It's like, all right, managers online, let's go. We're back in the game.
Yep.
Clutch McMahon intervention with divine intervention in my hand, get rid of it, put a bunch of cards back in my deck. It's like you have to have a way to deal with that. If you're going to play a throw maneuvers deck, have a way to deal with sponge decks.
I played a McMahon intervention card for the first time like last week.
I pack it in Kevin Owens because I run McMahonism in Kevin Owens.
We're not allowed to say who Mike used it in.
Exactly. Yeah.
But yeah, and to anybody listening to this, I've mentioned this on every video that I play in, and me and Evan have talked about this. If you have any questions or you want us to look at a build that you're working on or anything, you have questions about how we would approach things, reach out to us. Reach out to us on Discord either directly or talk to us like in the groups, like on the Virtual Classic group, the Deck Advice. Everybody in this community that is playing Virtual Classic is great. I specifically say Virtual Classic because the Virtual Classic is not met well by other members of the community. Nobody will turn you down. We might not have time for it immediately. Evan is not available at 3 o'clock in the morning, apparently.
Sorry about that.
It's all good. But nobody will turn you down asking for help. We have all been there to start. And even the more experienced people were like, hey, I think I'm going to try this out. What do you think of this? Or I need to fill in this deck with a few more cards. What do you think?
Yeah.
Or I sometimes send Evan a list. It's like, hey, did I miss anything like crucial, like important?
I mean, there's a couple of guys I message, be like, what do you think about X, Y, and Z?
Mhm.
You know, and they're like, oh, I hadn't thought about that. Maybe this will work, and maybe if you add this. So even I feel like I'm a very experienced and well-versed player in this game, but even I ask questions about certain superstars.
Yep.
And like I said, like I was keeping up to date with all these things in TCO, competitive scene, and all the rest of it until about a year ago, until the pandemic really just hit. And then I think it was just like a couple of weeks after being at the Discord, and Evan just said to me, "Oh, Ken, come here, come under my wing." And it's been honestly, that's been so much help to me. Like since me and Evan started playing regularly, my skill levels improved so much.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Luckily, the 2 guys that I play with locally were heavy hitter competitive players back at the end of Classic. And then when I got into the Discord and really got to talking with Evan more often, and we became more like dialogue discussion about decks and less me asking you how things work as far as like rules go, because this game's hard. I agree. My skill level is definitely spiked tremendously. My deck building has gotten better. My skills as a player, my decision making have gotten better. I'm getting more patient as a player. That was a big problem that I had, is I was impatient as a player. I wanted to just throw these maneuvers. It doesn't matter. Like now my evaluation of when is the right time to pass and not do anything.
That's another thing I would add on as well, is if you're, especially in virtual, or if you're coming into Classic, if you're coming into virtual from Classic, didn't look at like, I didn't put myself in the tier of like top players. But if you're watching this video and thinking, oh, these 3 guys must be really good at the game or whatever, didn't feel intimidated to play against us.
Nope.
As I'm saying, my skill level spiked since playing regularly with Evan. I got better by playing against people that were better than me.
Absolutely.
That is how you improve. Don't feel like you should be, oh, I don't want to play against them because there's no way I'm going to beat them.
Yeah.
Eventually you will. Repetition is key.
And also, two things, like Mike said, learn from every game you play, regardless of if you win, lose, smash, or
Yep.
get smashed. And also, if you're a new player and you have a deck that you just made, I have 300 decks built. Not all of them are great. So if you say,
One of
hey,
them
do
is
you
Age
have,
Outlaws.
it's like, hey, do you have a deck that's not amazing, but I can get a practice game in? I'll be like, okay, Vladimir Kozlov, here we go. Something
Yep.
like that. Or I'll play a lower tier superstar against you. I try to build all my decks to be able to win.
Yep.
But not everyone's, Yokozuna.
And then coming back around with that mindset of, if you are coming in from classic to virtual classic, one, don't be scared. It is a little overwhelming to come into virtual classic with 12 additional sets of cards, well, soon to be 12 additional sets of cards that you didn't really know. You don't know anything. Start small, pick a superstar you like, go through the list of superstars, pick somebody, and then go from there. We're here to help. But if you're coming in from classic and you felt you were a very strong competitive classic player, and you come into virtual classic and you play somebody who people consider to be a top player, myself, Mike, Evan, and we're trying to help you and we're trying to give you advice, don't let your pride inhibit your ability to learn.
Agreed. Another thing I'll say as well is that I've kind of held some hands for some people that have just downloaded Octagon or whatever, and they're having the first match. Now, when I play someone's first Octagon match with them, I am not trying to be a bastard when I use Bailey.
Yep.
I use Bailey because she is A, my favorite deck, B, my most fun deck, and C, because she is busy as all hell. She flips cards, she moves cards from everywhere, and I am using that deck to show you the capabilities that Octagon has.
Mm-hmm.
I am showing you how to do each and every function. That is why I'm using Bailey.
And then on that, coming to the experienced players playing new players. There's actually something that Evan and I talked about a few nights ago. If you're playing a new player, one, like he mentioned, look for a deck that isn't gonna give them a bad experience. And two, you don't have to play the game like it's a tournament with prize on the line.
Correct.
Purposefully make some mistakes, or let them play, because they're going to get more enjoyment as they play. Nobody has fun getting smashed, especially a new player. A lot of the times they'll understand it's like, oh, I'm still new at the game, but let them see what this game really can give them as far as enjoyment from. And two, if you purposely make mistakes that you know they're mistakes, that helps you. That lets you see, one, this is a mistake, I shouldn't do it. Let's see what happens if I do, in a controlled environment.
Yes.
I played a league game the other night where I let a few maneuvers go through just so that my opponent could see how to play the game because they had been getting stomped. And I'm like, well, let me see if they'll enjoy playing the game by actually playing the game.
And one thing I like to do if I'm playing against someone is I remind them of their effects that they've forgotten,
Mm-hmm.
even at my detriment.
Yep.
If you have a thing where when you play this card, you can shuffle in 3 cards. They'll play the card. I say it's successful, and they'll say, "Oh, it's 4 damage." I'll be like, "You can shuffle in 3 if you want,"
Mm-hmm.
because I want to play against the best version of their deck.
Yep.
Like
and
I
they
don't
have
want
to learn eventually.
I don't want to get a cheap victory.
As I'm saying, you did that a lot with me to start off with. You reminded me of a lot of stuff.
And there's a lot to keep track of in this game. Nobody remembers everything.
Yeah.
That's why game state is on the earnest of both players.
Except Mike when he's Bailey, and then it's just
good luck.
He plays a card, and then I wait 10 minutes, and then I start to take damage.
but I think that's a good place to stop on as far as that discussion goes. Again, if anybody coming into this game or anybody new or even everybody just experienced wants to talk to us, all three of us are available, granted at different times, but I generally always have my phone on. If you want to send me a message, talk to me. Evan has been amazing. It's just like randomly throughout the day, I'm like, I just had this idea. What do you think? And Mike, I haven't gotten to talk a ton to Mike about it, generally because of the time difference, but he's been open and amazing and wonderful to talk to about the game. We all love this game enough that we will talk about it generally at any point in the day.
I would do this for a living if I could.
Me too. But so we're gonna go on to the last segment of the game of our podcast here because we're going a little longer, but I think people will enjoy this. We have a treat for everybody. And from what I've been told, we have something to show for the upcoming V11 set. So I will let the people who know about this stuff take it.
Yes, V12 is well underway in playtesting and designing. We've done a couple spoilers so far. We spoiled the Hurt Business, the Superstar,
And the
on
pre-match.
on night 1 of WrestleMania, and then night 2 we spoiled the faction. And they were greeted relatively well.
I think they're good.
So I have another superstar that we're ready to spoil. The last video I did with Azareth, I said that Keith Lee will be in the set. So I figured today that we would take a look at his superstar card.
Yes.
So I'm going to share my screen and we'll
sorry.
all take a look at Keith Lee. Azareth,
I'm gonna take it out of gallery mode for it.
can you enable me to share my screen?
Yeah. How do I? As soon as I figure out how to do that.
Yeah. So yeah, Virtual 12. We don't have a specific release date yet, but it will be hopefully early summer. So pretty soon. Spoilers should hopefully be rolling out a little bit more frequently in the next month and a half. I will say that there are 10 superstars in the set. I think there's 10.
I think so.
Oh, is that we did see the throwback Bray Wyatt? That got
So,
spoiled, right?
He's the 11th.
Okay.
All right, so let me see if I can.
I think you should be able to now.
All right, here we go.
And I'm gonna focus on Evan here.
Keith Lee.
Oh, that's a new superstar card.
Ooh.
Yeah. He has a 8 hand size and a 3 value. When your first maneuver each turn is non-multi and is reversed from Arsenal, your turn does not end, but you may only play maneuvers for the rest of your turn. You may pack youthful agility, no cell maneuver, as big as tough as any 2 men, and high flying style, but you cannot pack cruiserweight style action or RMS maneuvers.
Oh man, I already love the thematics of this of him as a superstar.
Yeah.
High flying style fits him so well, but cruiserweight style doesn't.
Yeah.
I disagree.
And he
When I
gets.
first read it, I was like, why does he get high flying style?
Because he does moonsaults and stuff.
Where did he see him do a moonsault in WWE?
So when he premiered with Riddle, or not premiered, but when the NXT like invaded Raw, he did a moonsault on the.
Okay,
I've seen him do a Hurricane Rana.
I love that he gets big and tough and high flying style.
Yep. And youthful agility. Yeah. I love his packing abilities. And his ability is really good.
Yeah. His ability is in testing, it has been good. He's good. You have to hit that move in order to get the ability. And sometimes hitting a move is the hardest thing in the game.
Yep.
Yeah.
But if he gets on a roll, then he gets on a roll, which is very thematic to the actual wrestler, Keith Lee.
Yeah. And looking at it, so when I mentioned like have a plan against sponge decks, he does well against sponge decks because he is forcing them to now basically going to overturn 2 reversals. Because
And
to the first maneuver and then the second one.
the Keith Lee that I have built in playtesting, I have a couple interesting cards in there that really don't see play very often, like spinning toe hold throwback. Can only be played after a 4 damage or greater maneuver, can only be reverse from arsenal.
And he gets to go into high risks because you essentially played that maneuver. You have the high flying style. So you can pack like shooting star press throwback, which can be a game finisher itself.
Yeah.
Or
So
I love it, shooting star press.
when we first hit the first initial design of Keith Lee, his ability, it was something along the lines of when your first maneuver each turn is non-multi, non-this, non-that, non-reversal restriction, blah 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 blah. And we tested him and he sucked.
That's
Really,
too many,
this is awful.
too many
Awful.
restrictions.
Yeah, we said this sucked. And then I posted in our development board, I was like, for a guy whose gimmick is limitless, we put
He's got
so
a lot of
many,
limits.
we've put so many limits on him. So then I just put a big cross and I just said non-multi. That's it.
Yeah, and I like that
Now-
it's only the first non-multi reverse from arsenal gets to continue his turn. The next maneuver can be multi.
Yeah, sure can. It sure can.
So now you are at some points making your opponent have 3 reversals on the overturn to your maneuver.
Yeah.
That's
And he's
really
got
good.
he's got a lot of other tricks that we are not quite ready to spoil yet, but
Excited to see
he's
those.
he's gonna be a real good superstar.
Yeah, I am very, very excited to get him fully revealed and start playing with him. I've already dibsed him once he was confirmed. I told my group, I'm like, I get Keith Lee. Sorry, guys.
Yeah,
I've been waiting so much for him after Evan trolled me during V11.
So far we have the Hurt Business and Keith Lee have been spoiled. Hopefully the next time that we do a video, maybe I'll have someone else for us to take a look at.
Awesome.
Yeah, so really looking forward to Virtual 12. It should be, you know, it's shaping up to be a good set. We're like I said, we're in a good spot testing wise.
It looks like everybody's going to be really good.
Yeah, nothing has been well, there was one superstar that was a little silly, but he has been fixed.
Silly, a little silly.
He has been fixed. So he's now, you know, balanced.
Darn.
Um
Now, is this something that you can answer? Obviously, say no if you can't. Will V12 feature classic old superstar support, or is that going to be saved for a future set?
So Virtual 12 is going to be the 10 new superstars plus Bray Wyatt throwback. It's going to have that Hurt Business faction support, and it's going to be non-specifics.
Okay.
The plan.
So like the first half of V11.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
The plan for the next virtual set will be to include superstar specific support.
Okay, so that might be where we see the then, now, and forever 2 guy supports. Okay,
Yeah.
awesome. Do we have a projected release for V12?
It'll be early summer.
Okay.
I don't have a specific day, but I'm thinking June, July. But
if things keep going well in testing, then
maybe even sooner.
Right, yeah. You know, if you know, we have half the superstars have been pretty much finalized.
Yeah.
And then the other superstars we just have to tinker with a little bit more.
Awesome.
But yeah, it should be soon. Like I said, spoilers will be rolling out soonish, more consistently.
Well,
so yeah, we're looking forward to it. It's the dev team and the playtesting team put a lot of work into this stuff, and it's nice to see it appreciated.
Yeah.
And it's also fun every time I post to the regular Raw Deal Facebook page and they say how broken it is and how much text there is, and that's fun too.
Yep. If V11 really kind of showed anyone anything, is that the new superstars are good. I don't think anybody out of V11 is ultimately bad that I can look at. They're all really good. They're all well designed. They're thematic to what their character is trying to do. You guys have done a great job with that. And as somebody, as an avid role player of myself, a big D&D player, I love when things fit the theme.
Yeah.
So again, big kudos to you guys, and I have a lot of hope for seeing V12 continuing along that same line of Virtual Classic is all about making your superstars playable. Like, there aren't bad superstars. AJ Lee said. And I'm really looking forward to see where the rest of V12 shapes up.
Yeah.
So guys,
it'll be good.
I thank you guys for putting some time aside to talk with us today, and for everybody listening. I am going to go back and just restate about that King of the Ring tournament. Registration is open until midnight, May 8th, which is a Saturday. We are doing our deck lists. Feel free. I'm going to put the TCO forum post in the description of the video, so you can go right there. Let us know there that you want to play. Reach out to me on Discord, let me know. And then whenever you're ready to submit your deck list, I did ask that they be in the Octagon format. So load your deck up on Octagon and then just send that file to Dilbert. He'll be able to kind of house your deck list. It just makes it easier to look through, where we can just click the down arrow as we're looking at all the cards, making sure you're not packing face, heel, fan favorite, bash, Raw, SmackDown. Is there a superstar that can do all of that?
Horseman?
I don't think they can do all of it.
They don't get Raw and
They can't do
SmackDown.
Raw and SmackDown, but they can do the rest.
And I know Vince can do Raw and SmackDown.
Jericho as well.
But yeah, so registration ends on May 8th at midnight. We're hoping to then get the tournament started about a week after that. If you guys have any questions, please reach out to me. I'd love to talk to you about it. Me and Pat were really excited to finally get this off the ground. A lot of help from our friend Sean as well, who's been great to bounce ideas off of. And yeah, if you guys have any questions, reach out. I thank you guys for being on here. I hope you guys had fun.
Seriously, I had a great time. Just a couple of hours just speaking absolutely about a dead card game. So I'll be happy to do it again anytime. Just ask,
Awesome.
and then I'll rearrange. I'll manage to arrange some time for you. I've had a great time.
Perfect.
Yeah, same.
All right, guys. Thank you, and have a great night.
You too. Enjoy.